I am not an incredibly young man anymore. I've crossed the bridge of 30. And all I gotta say, I really hope I never have a hangover as bad as the Rams has been following their Super Bowl last year. Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews. I am forecasting, previewing Packers versus Rams, the upcoming Monday Night Football matchup. That's right, as the Green Bay Packers look to hopefully keep their playoff chances alive against an utterly lost and broken Los Angeles Rams team that still, in spite of their lostness, in spite of their brokenness, are coming off a highly inspirational victory on the back of Baker Mayfield, who basically hopped off a plane and won them a game. So today I'm going to be going through the injury reports that we saw today being Friday. These are not the questionable, doubtful, out tags. All of those come on Saturday during the day following those practices for both teams. But this at least gives us a pretty good indicator. With everything backed up one day this week, we're basically looking at this being like the Thursday practices, which we know is a pretty good indicator as to whether a guy is going to play or not. So I'm going to get it started off here with the Rams injuries before going over to the Packers side of things. Before I do that, though, please hit like, share, and subscribe. Welcome if you are new to Lombardi Time Brews. We are very, very glad to have you here. So looking at the Rams side of things, first of all, let's just cover this. This is a hurt team. I mean, they have mass injuries across their entire lineup. Now, some of their big studs are still active. Bobby Wagner, of course, being one of them. Jalen Ramsey, another. But guys like Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, Matthew Stafford, they're all out. And I'm going to get to those in a minute. But holy buckets. This is a team that just seemed like coming off of their Super Bowl last year. This year hit them like a truck. So these are the injuries for this week. Brian Allen, their center, is limited. Copeland, defensive tackle, was a do not practice. Aaron Donald, 2 days in a row, was a did not practice. Howard, the linebacker, do not practice. Jones, the linebacker, was limited. Long, the defensive back, was a DNP. Rochelle, the defensive back, was limited. And John Wolford, now their backup quarterback, was a DNP. But like I was saying earlier, this Rams team has 14 guys on injured reserve. 14. In an interview that I was reading with one of the Rams beat writers, they were saying that the Rams basically a couple weeks ago just stopped putting guys on IR because at this point they don't have any designations left to bring guys back. So what's the point? So this is even worse story than this, but 14 officially on IR, and that includes Matthew Stafford, Allen Robinson, Cooper Kupp, as well as 5 offensive linemen. They have started this year, not just played, started multiple offensive linemen this year that weren't even on their opening day initial 53-man roster. And when I get into the offensive stats here in just a little bit, you're going to see just how different of a Rams lineup this is than what has historically been under Sean McVay. On the Packers side of things, their injuries, well, David Bakhtiari, he did not practice. Now we know from LaFleur's press conference earlier that David Bakhtiari is considered a long shot to play. He, of course, coming off of the appendectomy. Tom Silverstein did a story on that appendectomy after talking to Bakhtiari. Turns out that was an incredibly dangerous situation, that his appendix was already leaking. It could have been quite disastrous, not from a football perspective, but for David Bakhtiari's life. So certainly wishing the best to him. Matt LaFleur did say that he's never been around a player who's had to have an emergency appendectomy. He doesn't know what the time frame is like, but he is considering Bakhtiari a very long shot to play on Monday. Now, Elton Jenkins was limited today. No concern there. Aaron Jones was limited today as well. Also of no concern. Mercedes Lewis did not practice today basically because of veteran rest. But the story with the Packers coming off their bye is, you know who I didn't say? I didn't say Romeo Doubs. I didn't say Darnell Savage. I didn't even say Aaron Rodgers was limited. Rudy Ford. All of those guys that have had nicks and bruises, and for Rodgers, the thumb injury, and Doubs having missed so many weeks, they're all back. This is the healthiest this Packer team has been basically since the start of the season. And that could mean good things for this end of season run. All right, so diving into the Los Angeles Rams. Here's what we know. Game's taking place Monday night in Lambeau Field, and it is supposed to be chilly on Monday night. We're talking like single-digit type temps by the time that the game actually gets started. Who are these Los Angeles Rams? Well, of course, they're coached by Sean McVay. They're the defending Super Bowl champions. They're 4-9 on the year, including 1-4 on the road as they come to the frozen tundra. Their key addition, as I already mentioned, has been Baker Mayfield, who basically hopped off a plane, got him a win last week, and now is here again. But their key losses happens to be all of those injuries. In addition to comparing the team to last year, you also do have to look at OBJ and the fact that he is no longer with the Rams. Last time these two teams met was on November 28th of 2021, where the Packers picked up a 36-28 victory. Leading offensive producer for the Rams that day happened to be Cooper Kupp. Of course it was Cooper Kupp. I have never had Cooper Kupp on a single fantasy team in my life, and I hate to say that I don't like the dude, but I'm sick of seeing good stats for him. But Cooper Kupp last year against the Packers had 7 catches for 96 yards. Stafford threw for over 300. On the Packers side, the victorious side of the ball, Rodgers threw for over 300 himself, 100 of which went to Devontae. But the big thing, and this is going to be a big thing in this game too, the Packers last year could not run the ball against the Rams. They wound up having about 30 carries between Jones and Dillon together, 30 carries for 92 yards, just barely over 3 yards per carry. And that could be the story of this game as well, even with different personnel. So these here Los Angeles Rams, I mentioned how they are broken. They are lost. We thought the Packers were broken earlier this year. No, sir. The Rams are a whole level of broken beyond that of the Green Bay Packers, and it goes farther than just their injuries. Kurt Benkert, when joining Tom Grassi on his live stream the other day for Thursday Night Football, actually said that the LaFleur and McVay offense has been figured out by the league. There's a reason why we saw the Packers struggle earlier this year. There's a reason why the Rams can't get it together regardless of who they have on the field. LaFleur's offense is most closely aligned with McVay, according to Benkert, not that of Kyle Shanahan, which is still being successful. And he believes, as a former Packer quarterback, as a guy who's even spent time on San Francisco's practice squad, that the NFL has figured out the McVay and the LaFleur offense. So, seeing these two teams go against each other could be fascinating. Are these guys going to bring in new wrinkles? More on that in a minute. But offensively, the Los Angeles Rams, they're only putting up 16.8 points per game. Yeah, that's 29th in the NFL. Just for context, the Packers and their struggling offense is putting up 20.2 points per game. Offensively speaking, running the ball, the Rams have not been able to do it with much proficiency at all. We know about the struggles of Cam Akers. We know about even getting him on the field, considering earlier this year around the trade deadline, he was saying, I'm never playing for the Rams again. And the Rams basically said, we agree. And then he suited up for him a week later. Well, he still can't run all that well, or all that productively, I should say. Darrell Henderson was one of their leading rushers earlier in the year. They cut him. He now is on another team. So this is a Rams team, and they have a rookie, Williams, who they believe in, who's coming along. But still, you see the numbers bear it out. They put up 86.1 rushing yards per game. That is 30th in the NFL. This passing attack, even when it had Matthew Stafford, was in a lot of trouble. Then they had temporarily Wolford, and now we've got Baker. But nonetheless, on the entire season, they're putting up 196.9 passing yards per game. That's good for 25th in the NFL. According to PFF, their highest ranking offensive member, and I'm talking has played like the majority of snaps, the highest ranking guy, Rob Havenstein, their offensive tackle, coming in at 70.9 on the grade from PFF. Turnovers, they've got a -6 turnover differential. Certainly unlike a Sean McVay team, to be -6, but that comes in at 30th in the NFL. One of the largest contributors of that, interceptions, and how this passing attack, similar to the Packers, just could not get going this year. Defensively, though, this is where it gets really interesting. Let's say Aaron Donald plays, or he doesn't play. Either way, they have got stars at every level of this defense. You've got Aaron Donald at defensive tackle. You've got Leonard Floyd on the edge. Bobby Wagner at inside linebacker is still playing like an all-pro. Jalen Ramsey out there at corner. I know Packer fans don't think much of Jalen Ramsey, and I don't disagree, but you do have to give him credit for being a top-tier cornerback. So defensively, when I bear out the numbers here, it's an incredibly interesting year for the Rams. Overall, they're giving up 22.8 points per game. That's dead middle in the NFL, 22.8. Now, rushing, and this is where it could be problematic for the Packers. The Rams are giving up 101.9 yards per game on the ground. That's the 5th lowest total in the NFL. They rank 5th in rushing defense. Could be quite problematic. I'll get to why in a minute. Passing defense, even their passing defense, 228.6 yards per game. That's 21st in the NFL. In addition to that, they are one of the worst teams in the NFL at giving up big plays, registering as 30 yards or more. So basically what you see from the numbers alone, whether Donald plays or not, this team cannot be run on. But what they can is they can be beaten deep. Methinks that may come up later. Their highest graded defensive player, Bobby Wagner. Still doing it. 90.7 PFF grade. Right behind him, Aaron Donald at 90.5. Their leaders in sacks, they've got 3 of them that are all tied according to PFF. Leonard Floyd, Bobby Wagner, Aaron Donald, all tied with 5. And one thing that I wanted to point out, because Jalen Ramsey isn't that high on their PFF ranking. He's got an overall grade of about 80. How's he doing this year? Well, it's an interesting year for Jalen Ramsey, too. He has 2 sacks on the year. He's given up 579 yards throughout the air. He has got 9 pass breakups, but only 1 interception. So again, a season of good and bad for Jalen Ramsey. So, what are the key matchups to this game? Number 1, to me, it really comes down to the numbers, and it shows there. Can the Green Bay Packers, with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, run the ball against Los Angeles Rams, regardless of whether Aaron Donald plays? I found some interesting stats on Twitter that I wanted to share with you, including from Pack Daddy on Twitter. He said the Packers are 1-7 when they run for less than 175 yards. 1-7 when they run for less than 175 yards. The Rams and their top 5 run defense have not given up 175 yards on the ground a single time this year. Whether Donald plays or not, the Green Bay Packers are incredibly reliant on their run game, as we all have been screaming from the rooftops, run the freaking ball all year. And the numbers bear it out. They are very reliant on the run game to establish their offense. But that happens to be what the Rams do best. Matchup number 2. Packers pass rush against the Rams offensive line. According to PFF, the Rams have the 30th ranked offensive line in the NFL. 30th. It is a banged up, it is bruised, it is majority substitutes at this point, but the 30th ranked offensive line in the NFL. However, on the Packers side of things, just to give you an idea, according to PFF, Rashawn Gary, who was out in week 9, is still leading the Packers in pressures. Preston Smith, Kenny Clark, no one's passed him on the leaderboard yet. So even against this completely broken, messed up offensive line of the Rams, can the Packers generate pressure even against one of the worst O-lines? Can Enagbare do it? Can Preston Smith do it? Can Kenny Clark, going against backup guards, become the game wrecker that he was earlier in this year when he was garnering comparisons to Aaron Donald? Are the Green Bay Packers actually going to play their young defensive linemen more, or they can continue to trot out Dean Lowry and Jaron Reed? could make or break the game. But we do know that overwhelming Baker Mayfield, especially as he is still in a new offense, will be key. Can they do it? Especially coming off a game against Chicago where they had their season low in pressures against Justin Fields. By the way, one quick little side note here. If you are a hater of the Green Bay Packer offensive line, if you are one of those people that has said that the Green Bay Packer offensive line is the main epicenter of all of their woes on offense this year, please know that the PFF has the Green Bay Packer offensive line as the second best offensive line in the NFL this year, in the NFL right now. And that's without David Bakhtiari. So, yeah, y'all chill. Number 3. I just called this one simply Aaron Donald. Look, running the ball is easier when Aaron Donald isn't in there. Passing the ball is easier when Aaron Donald isn't in there. This ain't tough. Aaron Donald is a once-in-a-generation type defensive lineman. If he's in there, you have to account for him. If he's not in there, congratulations, your job just got easier. Elgton Jenkins has historically fared very well against Aaron Donald, but is that still going to be the case as Elgton Jenkins is still coming back from his ACL injury? Or will the Rams, with knowledge of the weaknesses around the Packer offensive line, are they going to shift him around? Maybe play him straight up on Myers, who's been very inconsistent this year? Or do they kick him over to John Runyon Jr.? One thing that we do know is that the Rams are going to be coming at Yash hard with Leonard Floyd, who's tied for the Rams' lead in sacks with 5. Leonard Floyd also has 16 pressures in the last 3 weeks alone. That's going to be one of the tougher matchups for the Packer offensive line. Now, Aaron Donald has basically missed the last game and a half. He did not participate in today's practice, as I said earlier. We really don't know until after this is published. Who knows when, because Friday night publishing is always super slow. But we're not going to know until middle of the day Saturday what Aaron Donald's true designation is. And I won't be shocked at all if we don't know if he plays or not until the game actually starts on Monday night. When asked about Aaron Donald, Coach Matt LaFleur said we would be foolish not to prepare like he's going to play. And he's right. When you're up against potentially that talented of a player, you better account for them whether you know or not. Number 4, on a similar vein to number 3, this one's just a name. All about Baker. Nothing about the Rams' offensive line is particularly scary. That's been well covered. Nothing about their running backs is particularly scary. Hell, at this point, nothing about Tutu Atwell and Van Jefferson is particularly terrifying. But if you watched that game last week that Baker took over, you'd see this kind of reckless, abandoned schoolyard football that the Rams ran. Not too much thinking. We're going to go out there, we're going to play football, and we're just going to sling it. And that happens to be what Baker Mayfield throughout the course of his career has actually done best. And a team with that kind of mentality is always dangerous for a team with high stakes like the Green Bay Packers, whom we know must win out to keep their playoff chances alive. By the way, shout out to the San Francisco 49ers. Thanks for beating the Seahawks last night. Very helpful. Thank you. Maybe the only time that we thank the 49ers for anything, but thank you. Number 5, Sean McVay versus Matt LaFleur. Look, the TV coverage is going to talk about this friendship, mentee, mentorship thing way too much. Every single time that the Packers and Rams play, they talk about it way too much. And so here's why it's a key matchup. LaFleur, throughout the majority of their head coaching careers, going head-to-head, LaFleur has owned this. He just has, including in the playoffs. But one thing just to be wary of, with an inferior roster in Lambeau, stakes are high for the Packers. They are not for the Rams. Rams don't even have draft position to play for, considering they don't have any picks forever. That makes them dangerous. And it means McVay may be willing, even with a new quarterback, to dump out all of the craziest stuff you can imagine, because you know McVay wants to beat his mentee at least once. Will LaFleur be ready? It's a key question. Ultimately, I do have to say the Green Bay Packers at this point, because of all the injuries on the Rams, the Green Bay Packers have a far superior lineup to that of the Rams. We know that they're at home. We know that this game is going to be freezing cold. which is not the advantage for the Packers that it should have been in recent years. We'll see how it fares this year. Against this Rams run defense, I don't know as if it's that important. But they have a far superior roster at this juncture. This game means something to the Packers. For the Rams, it's all kind of secondary motivations like beating LaFleur, pride, etc. The Packers straight up need this game for playoffs. So the Green Bay Packers win it. It's going to be 24-17 in my mind, but this game is going to be a mishmash of sloppy football from both teams, with the Packers doing just enough to come out on top. I would love for this to be an actual barnstormer of a game where the Packers put up 45 and solve all of their woes. But they still get the win, 24-17, some sloppy play by both teams. But yet a Packer victory and the playoff chances stay alive. Thanks so much for joining me on today's episode of Lombardi Time Brews. I will not be doing a Monday afternoon episode. We'll see what time the game ends on Monday night, if I do an instant reaction late into the night, Monday night. But for sure, you will get a shout-outs and get-outs video from me on Tuesday, and then the rest of the week will look normal. So, hope everyone has an absolutely fantastic weekend. Hope you enjoy Monday Night Football. If there's any breaking news, of course, I will hop on here. Anything real big, I'll hop on and talk about it, of course. But, hope you have a sensational weekend, and as always, go Pack Go.